Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Warfare TV. Our second episode this week. We are double dipping because you just can't get enough Content Warfare TV. And I am very excited to have our guest here with us today, who I had the opportunity of meeting in person at a pet sitting conference of all places, Josh Carey's Pet Sittingology Conference. Amazing place. And I had the very tough duty of following him on the stage. I bring to you Jerod Morris, the VP of Marketing from Copyblogger, and so many other things that we're going to talk about today. How's it going, my man?
It's going very well, Ryan. Thanks for having me on here. That was a great conference in Las Vegas. I, of course, had to follow Marcus Sheridan, which was slightly intimidating, being sandwiched between you two guys, but it was that was great, and it was nice to finally be able to meet you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I was actually giving Jerod a bit of a hard time before we went live here. If you look, I'm going to click back over to his. Look at all the swag that he has in the background there. Like it just looks so pro. He's got all his different things he does, and then you look at my backdrop, and it's like this boring white kind of dark backdrop. So I got to work on that. I'm feeling background inadequacy right now.
And you got a perfect space on your wall right there to hang something too, because I mean you got the door over here, so that's hard. But that wall is perfect right there over your shoulder.
So everyone that's listening to the audio version of this right now is like, this is the worst podcast I've ever heard in my life. They're talking about visual references and not explaining what's going on. Okay, so we're gonna take a deep dive into what Jerod has going on and his expertise. But first, I just want to share a very quick story with all of you. And this is just the oddities of life and how things work. So it is currently 12:02 p.m. Eastern Time that we are originally recording this hangout. If you're listening to the podcast sometime in the future, you know exactly when we re-recorded. At 11 p.m., so 1 hour and 2 minutes before this moment, I received a phone call from my father, who is babysitting my child at my house, that our dog had gotten loose and had bolted into the woods. So now I live probably 15 minutes from my office where I'm recording this, and I jump in the car. I drive about 85 miles an hour home. It took me about 11 minutes to get there. I sprint in full office clothing straight into the woods. About 100 yards in, I find the dog. I grab the dog, pick her up, sprint 100 yards back out of the woods, throw her in my car because she's full of mud and I don't want her to be in my house, and fly all the way back to the office where 10 minutes before we just went live, we got back in the office, all things good, and now Isabella is angrily laying down in the back because she's stuck in the office and not home with all her nice comfortable stuff. So it is funny the way life works, and I just wanted to share that story with you. So if I seem a little discombobulated, that's too bad, just bear with it. But let's get on to Jerod and more important things that people actually want to hear about.
I don't think there's anything more important than our dogs. I think we could probably spend the hour talking about our dogs and thoroughly entertain people.
We probably could, you know. So I'm going to tell you another quick story. So we're at this pet sitting conference, and we watch Marcus go, and then Jerod goes, and I had queued up like this really cool first slide where we're talking about digital marketing to a group of pet sitters, and I bought my pet mail order off the internet. So I this is a really cool way to kind of start. And doesn't this son of a gun start his presentation about his dog? And I'm like, oh, my story's going to seem like I'm like copying him now. But
at a pet sitting conference, though, that's not that bad. I think people would kind of assume that you'd start with a dog story. If it had been just some other random conference, it might have seemed a little odd. But, pet sittingology, I think you can start it with, talking about your dog without feeling too bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're 4 minutes in, and we haven't gotten anything into what's going on. So, so let's get into you, Jerod. I want to hear about you. You do a bunch of different things, a couple different podcasts, wear a bunch of hats. Mm-hmm. Why don't you give us the kind of 30,000 foot, not from birth, but as much as relevant background on what got you where you are today?
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, I do. I'm fortunate to have my hands in a few different projects, and I guess the fortunate part is that they're all projects that I'm really, really excited about. And chief among them is, of course, the work that I do with Copyblogger, where I'm the VP of marketing and host the lead podcast with Damian Farnworth. And I was really excited about the episode that we just did, because a lot of times we delve into really specific copywriting and kind of content marketing techniques and that kind of thing. And we really spent some more time on this last episode kind of talking about our stories and how we got where we were and things we learned, that kind of thing. With one of the main points being that if you had told me that I would be in this position 5 or 6 years ago, I would have said you're crazy, because I didn't really know what content marketing was, didn't really have much experience online, and just it's kind of been from one thing to another that has led me here. And really, I guess the through line is that I've always loved writing. I've always loved the content creation process. And of course, if you're doing anything involved in content marketing, you've got to have a love for the actual creation of the content, and on some level, the ability to do it and do it well. And so I think all those things have just kind of led from one step to another to where I am now, which is a place that I feel really fortunate to be in, because I think anybody who is familiar with Copyblogger, who knows Copyblogger, knows that it's just a wonderful team of people and a great place to work.
And you have the amazing new-to-me nickname of Wolverine, and any organization that is willing to give you that nickname has to be a fun place to work.
Yeah, that was I believe Brian Clark actually coined that one. We did a hangout. Damien and I did a hangout, and this was in a phase where I kind of shaved the mustache part of the beard. Right now, again, for people listening on the podcast, you can't see, but I have kind of an out-of-control beard growing since it's the wintertime. So not really as Wolverine-ish now. I'm not sure what you'd call it right now. Perhaps a Robert Bruce starter kit, you could call it that, but there's a long way to go to ever get to his beard level.
Yeah, like a junior, like an apprentice level lumberjack beard is what I would.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Reference. So you just said something that completely intrigues me, and I want to dive into, and that's the idea that if you're going to be involved with content marketing, that you have to at least have some love for the process of creating content. And I believe that to be true, but there are people who are sitting here going, I want to harness content marketing, but I can't necessarily say that I love or have yet found a part of creating content that I love. So one, is it truly a necessity to love the process? And two, what are some ways that you would recommend people test, how can we find out whether we love? Because I think a lot of times it's just we haven't done enough work or tried enough different things. So I'd like you to dive into that a little bit.
Probably depends on your definition of love a little bit, because creating content and doing it well over time it can be a struggle. I mean, you can love something and it's still hard. I mean, I love my fiance Heather, but that doesn't mean that things are always enjoyable between us, right? I mean, there are difficult times. Hopefully she doesn't watch this. She doesn't care about content marketing, so I don't think she will. But you know what I mean? But I love her. I adore her. I'm crazy about her. I'm committed to her, right?
Now you're backpedaling.
No, but you see what I mean? And so I think it's the same thing when you're creating content for your business, right? I mean, you love your business, but that doesn't mean that, one day it may be a little bit more difficult or it may be a strain, but it's because you love it, it's because you believe in it, that you're willing to do that. And so I think there's got to be that fundamental love for it, which is probably born out of some passion that you have for it, some level of expertise, some amount of success that you've had doing it. And then that's what allows you, because it's going to be hard. It's not easy. I think you can start out and it's all real easy because the ideas are coming and it's fresh and it's new. But at some point you've been doing it for 6 months and you struggle to come up with an idea and maybe it's just not flowing as well that one day. And that's where I think that love for it has to come out, because you find that extra gear to go do a little bit more research or to think about it in a different way, to stay committed to it, to where you can bust down that wall, get through it, and then keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I think a lot of this too is utilizing the different mediums for creating content. So a lot of business owners will say, well, I'm not a writer. Right, and they basically pigeonhole writing as the only form of content marketing. But as you just mentioned, you have the lead podcast. You also do a podcast for Indiana University, correct? Post-game show. Yep, you got
I
the
do,
hat
and
on.
it's a Google Hangout like this. We do just like you do, and then turn that into a podcast.
Yeah, so if you had to write about IU post game show every time, that might be more of a struggle, right? But because you took on this different medium, now it becomes a really fun way for you to create content about this topic that you enjoy, and that way you love it. But if someone said, I need 5,000 words post game every show for you, or every day from you, you might say, I don't really love this. This isn't something that I love doing. So, you know, how have you found exploring the different mediums? Like how does video work for you versus images? What are some of the pieces of advice that you can give somebody for trying some of these different forms of medium?
Well, I think you want to be able to play to your strengths, and you want to be able to play to the mediums that you do genuinely enjoy. And so I think, the way that you find that is, of course, by knowing yourself and then just by trying stuff. I mean, when Google Hangouts first came out, it seemed intriguing to me. And we'd actually been doing the Assembly Call, the IU basketball show. We'd been doing it just through Blog Talk Radio. So it was just a podcast. We did it over our phones. The quality wasn't that great. And Hangout seemed like a great way to build a better connection with the audience and just to create a better show. Because I think any kind of interaction is better when you're kind of watching, when you can interact. Like I can see your facial expressions as we're talking right now, and it's, more two-way communication. And so I think, just trying that out and realizing, hey, this is fun, I like this, and it's something different, because you're right. I mean, if I had to just, after every single game, just sit down and write, 2,000 words, I mean, I might actually like that because I love IU basketball, but it would get old, and I don't think it's as good of an experience for the audience. Now, I might have hated Hangouts. And if I had hated Hangouts, then I wouldn't have continued to do them, because if I hate something, then the audience is going to hate the content. So, and that's kind of that difference between love and hate. I mean, if you really do genuinely hate it, that's going to come across, and you need to find a different avenue. So if you can't find a content medium that you enjoy, you may just hate your topic. And that's a big problem, because if you do, I think you're going to have a really hard time succeeding in any type of content marketing if fundamentally you just don't enjoy what you're creating content about.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really good stuff that you just brought up in there. I think what a lot of business people miss is what a lot of business people miss. So we can tell we're on a live broadcast.
Hey, at least your dog isn't snoring in the background.
Yeah, what you just said is he's about to ask a stupid question, so just don't go there. Isabella, here. So what a lot of people don't realize is that when we're creating content, your passion for a topic, and I don't want to say the word passion because that kind of gets misconstrued and it's a little buzzy. Your enthusiasm, your expertise for a topic, all those come through the content that you create. And the reason that great copywriters and great content marketers can ask for the fees that they do is because they have that ability to kind of push that through their content regardless of their love for a topic. But that is an incredibly difficult skill. I don't have that skill. If I don't love the thing that I'm talking about, or at least I'm not enthusiastic about it, it's really hard for me to create good content for it. So I think it's a mix between the topic, what you're talking about, and how you're delivering it that really allows you to kind of hit that your groove. And for me, it's been, I love the Hangout format, but just podcasts in general. The audio version of creating content is something I can never give up. I mean, I love writing as much as anybody, but I can never give this up. This is the bonds that you make and what you're able to draw out of people. It's just second to none. Now, you guys on the lead, you don't do interviews, right? It's only ever been you and Damien. I think once you had Brian on, but for the most part, it's just the two of you, right?
Yeah, that's for the most part how we did it. I did an interview with Michael Stelzner early on after I took it over. I think those are the only interviews that we've done. Previously it had been when Robert was doing it. Now I think we are going to do some more interviews here coming up over the next few months. So we are going to branch out a little bit, yeah. But for the most part, it's been now just me and Damien, and we generally plan it out, have a pretty good idea of where we're going to go with each one. Because I think our big idea with that one was, with a podcast, there's so many different types, right? Like this one that we're on right now, it's very conversational. We don't really know where we're going to be in 10 minutes. And I think, when people are listening to your show, I think they know the general topics you're going to cover, but they come from more conversational, kind of stay a while, kick your feet up, that kind of thing. And we wanted the lead to fill a little bit of a different niche where it was, 15 to 20, 25 minutes of, real specific, getting down into one specific topic. And so, it's just kind of, each podcast is a little bit different in trying to fill that niche. But you may see us start doing a few more interviews in the future.
Yeah, I like that. I really like, I have considered, and I probably have never said this before, I have considered bringing a co-host on multiple times, because I think, especially when you find somebody that you have a good dynamic with, and we actually talked about this a little bit when we saw each other in person, but you and Damien have this really good, I'm not going to say Abbott and Costello, because neither one of you is that silly, but he is kind of more the artsy, and artsy in a way that he's so in his topic, right? Like, he is so dialed into copywriting and that. And then you're more like the straight man over here, like pulling him out of ones and zeros and like dissecting what he says. And I think that dynamic is fantastic, and it really comes off, especially in that 15 to 18-minute format where, man, you're going to come in, Damien's going to drop 7 bullet points on it. You're going to translate it into language that the whole entire audience will understand. And that really works. And the reason I think it works is because you guys set from the very beginning the expectation for the show. And that part is what a lot of people miss, is that you can do whatever you want, right? You could have a 1-minute show as long as at the beginning you're saying to people, this is going to be a 1-minute show and this is what you're going to get. So, talk to me a little bit about, and this is where I'm trying to transition into here, is the idea of planning and strategy in your content marketing. So you obviously had a plan for your show and knew kind of what you wanted it to be. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit through how you developed that strategy in the context of how other people can think about developing a content strategy.
Well, I think it's so important what you just said, which is expectations. And setting expectations is so important, because that is the frame of reference people will come to your content with, and how they will judge it, as being a success or a failure, or how it kind of fit into what they need. For us with the lead, we knew we wanted to get it back going, and I really, was just kind of in this place where I was, I would go out during the day, walk my dog for 15, 20 minutes, and I was always listening to podcasts, and I thought, I'm really liking these 15 to 20-minute shows, so let's do that with the lead. Let's make it that. Let's set that expectation. And then let's just try and be really organized with it so that we hit these specific topics. Now, what kind of evolved is, the lead really became a cog in this kind of content repurposing machine that we've had going at Copyblogger, which ended up fitting really well, because obviously a big focus for ours at Copyblogger right now is Rainmaker and the Rainmaker platform, and a lot of our content is and what we're doing is really designed to say, hey, watch us, because the way that you have success with this platform is just kind of by doing what we're doing. And so how it evolved is, we were looking for topics, and Damien had created this great post, the 11 essential ingredients of a blog post, which basically had taken old content and put it into this kind of 11-step plan for a perfect blog post. That turned into an infographic, and we're like, well, why don't we just take each one of these, turn it into an episode, and there's 11 episodes right there for people who would rather consume this stuff via podcast. And so it really, and so now we've done that a couple of times, and it's really evolved into this, hey, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel every single time with a podcast, we've got all this great content in our archives that people either missed the first time, or just because they weren't a reader then, or they've never gotten it because they're a podcast listener. So let's focus more on creating a good show, having good interaction, and the content's already there. It's kind of been created. Let's just talk about it and bring, add a little bit of value to the discussion. And so that kind of evolved just throughout. But I think it was important that we set that expectation right off the bat for, hey, when you come to the lead, you can expect, here's the amount of time to expect to invest, and we want you to take away something useful that you can put into practice tomorrow. That's always the idea. We try and end each show with that, like, hey, what's one specific takeaway? And so I think as long as you do that, then there's some leeway in there to have some fun, be creative within that kind of overall framework that we set.
Yeah. And I love the breakdown that you just gave of repurposing content. We had on Monday we had Jay Bear on the show, and he gave everybody like this almost backdoor look into his podcast repurposing. And what everyone just heard now was a great example of how one blog post turned into an amazing image that I remember when you guys first launched that image, that got shared all over the place, and then repurposed into a podcast. I read the original blog post, I shared and pinned the image, and I listened to all 11 of the podcasts. So when we talk about content repurposing, what other strategies do you guys use at Copyblogger, or just that you use and that you have favorites for? Because I think this is an incredibly powerful topic that is almost like one of the bars that keeps amateurs as amateurs and professional content marketers as professionals is content repurposing.
And here's something else that's really important to remember is I talk with a lot of people, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, that some people don't like writing or don't have confidence in their writing. So they think they can't create written content. They can't create text content for the web. But that's false. That's simply an inability to think outside the box. Because what you can do with a podcast or with this Google Hangout that we're doing right now is create a transcript. And transcripts are a lot more powerful, I think, than people think. I remember when we first started doing them for the lead, I kind of thought it was a bit of a waste of time because I thought, who's really reading these transcripts? Why am I spending so much time editing these down and so that they're out there? And I remember when we had our authority conference in Denver last May, I had so many people actually come up to me. I didn't ask them. It was unsolicited. They come up to me and say, hey, I'm really glad you guys put transcripts on there because that way I can read it. Somebody even said that he read it on the treadmill. Like, who reads a transcript on the treadmill? You're supposed to listen to the podcast while you're working out, not read it. But he said he actually reads a transcript. And so for anybody out there who struggles to have confidence in their writing or who struggles with the actual sitting down and typing part that just doesn't like that, but can do a podcast, people say, well, just ask me a question, I can talk about it. Great. Talk about it, record yourself, and hire a transcriptionist to turn it into a transcript. That's a piece of written content for the web. So you didn't have to write it, but you can still create that content. And so I think there are so many ways now with new technologies and just new opportunities online to kind of step outside of maybe what you think, your preconceived notions of what content creation was. And there's so many different ways to play to your strengths. And that doesn't mean that you don't try and improve your weaknesses, but I'd spend more time playing to my strengths and really maximizing the investment of my time in creating content. And so I think that's just another way to repurpose that some people don't think about, but that can be really beneficial.
Dude, I am 100% on board with you. So a good friend of mine owns an insurance marketing agency, so he helps insurance agencies specifically. That's his niche. And he's writing a book, which is coming out, I think, in a month or two. He's written 90% of the book by recording into his cell phone, and then he sends it off to a transcriber who transcribes it, and then all he does is go back in and plow through some of the edits and make some editorial decisions. But, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's going to be an incredible book. I mean, the guy's got great thoughts on this stuff. He's been an agent. So, but this book would never exist if he had to sit down and write it. It would never exist. So what he does is while he's driving, he's texting, he's recording, and then he just takes and emails a transcript to somebody. So it's things like, I could never write a book, I could never do this. It's like, if you can think outside the box about these ways like you just described, there are people in creating incredible pieces of content in non-necessarily traditional ways that allows them to reach these mass audiences.
You know what else too? Some people who think they're good writers might even want to try that, because sometimes writing, it's difficult to make writing conversational, to make the tone right that's really fun to read, and sometimes that comes out a lot better just when you're talking. And so going back, having that clay to mold, then you do need to edit them. I mean, I would definitely edit something that's spoken for reading because there are some differences, but I think some people should even try that before they sit down and write, because I think what they'll end up with is a lot better.
Yeah, a good tool for this is Dragon Dictate. I got that for my Mac. It costs like $100, and it works incredibly well. There's a lot of different tools for it, but that's one that I've used that has been at different times. When I've really needed to like pump content out on a mass scale, I've used that tool. You can also use Fiverr, Elance. There's a lot of different places that will help you create transcripts. SpeechPad is what I use mostly, but like you said, you definitely have to edit it, because also the transcriber will make mistakes. So you just have to look in there and make sure that everything makes sense. But I'm right with you, man. And this whole idea of content repurposing and is just now. Do you guys use? I've been starting to test LinkedIn Publisher as a place to repurpose certain ideas and kind of reach that LinkedIn audience, not just straight copy and pasting posts, but maybe repurposing certain sections or taking a video and putting it in and building a little different text around it and that kind of stuff, and using some set other platforms. And I know that a big concept in your organization is digital sharecropping. So I would love to dive into the idea of digital sharecropping with you, where you guys stand on it, and what you think about a platform like LinkedIn Publisher, and maybe how people should use something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the goal, of course, is to always make sure that you own your content, and that when you're publishing something originally, that it is at a place you own. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't put a net new post out as a guest post or something like that strategically. Of course, you want to do that, but you just don't want to have a social media site that you don't own be the hub of your content, because the rules can change on you at any time, and it's just not smart. You want to own what you're doing. I think you asked about LinkedIn. I think you'll see over the next 3 to 6 months our LinkedIn strategy change and evolve. I think we've put a lot of time into Google Plus, and Damian Farnworth continues to do that. And he will do that, what you just said. He'll take a piece of an article and publish it, as its own piece on Google Plus. He just did this post. It was like 33 resources for SEO, something like that, where he basically curated this giant list of links for Google Plus, and we're like, hey, that's pretty good. We should actually put that on Copyblogger at some point. So because it's kind of a place for him to play a little bit, and then sometimes you can bring that stuff over. With LinkedIn, we haven't done anything yet on Publisher. We're getting a discussion group going and kind of starting to post more from our LinkedIn page. But I think there's a lot of untapped opportunity there for us that a lot of other people have been kind of blazing the trails on and showing the way. So I do think we will start doing some things like that, because yes, if you've published a good piece, there's nothing wrong with, rewriting it for another site, or even just republishing it straight up. That used to be frowned upon. That used to be a big SEO no-no. As long as you've got that canonical link pointing back to the original piece, it's really not that big a deal anymore.
Yeah.
And it's this whole concept of working smarter, not harder. Content marketing is wonderful, it's great, it's beneficial, but it's hard work and it takes time. And so anything you can do to work smarter and be more efficient with it, do it. And not everybody reads every post that we write. We like to think that. And you have audience turnover. So just remember that great idea you had a year ago, a lot of the new people coming to your site may not have heard it, may not have read it, and they may need it. And so, either pulling it back in a new way on your own site, putting it out as a guest post somewhere else, there's a lot of benefit to doing that.
The idea of audience turnover is a huge concept that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. It's kind of like, I think a lot of times when we start content marketing, we assume that if we get somebody's email address, that for infinity they are now part of our audience, and that they will read everything we post and open every email, and that's all we need to do. Churn is just as much a part of building an audience as it is any other part of running a business. People come and go, people's jobs change. I mean, if you send out an email, how many bounces do you get where it's like, John Smith at XYZ, company is no longer here anymore, and their job changed and they're just not interested in your content anymore. So, right with you, we have to constantly be building that audience and filtering that audience and surveying that audience to figure out how we can re-engage them sometimes. What do you guys do? Because you're always on, I'm not going to say the forefront, because that doesn't really have any context, but you guys are definitely thinking about your business in ways I think a lot of media type organizations do not, like with removing comments, Facebook, leaving Facebook. I don't necessarily get into those topics in specifically, but more, what is it about your organization that you guys are willing to make moves like that? Because most businesses would say, I could never get rid of my Facebook page. I could never remove comments. I mean, now everyone thinks that removing comments is the coolest thing in the world, but before you guys, everyone would say that person is stupid. So, what do you think it is about your organization that allows you to make these changes and think about these things?
Well, I think it boils down to being relentlessly focused on creating value for our audience and creating profit for the company and for our company, for Copyblogger. And I think sometimes, because the internet kind of started out as this open place, there was a time where it's like people shouldn't be able to make money from their websites, like that was frowned upon to sell on your website. And I think people like Brian Clark and a lot of those early people who kind of blazed the trail and showed that it was okay, that's not the case anymore. It's not like you're violating some big taboo now to ask your audience to buy XYZ or to click this link, whatever. But I think there is still, people get uncomfortable sometimes with this idea that you can build an audience and provide value for an audience and still make money. But they're not. Those are not mutually exclusive. They go together. They have a direct relationship, not an inverse relationship. And so for us, I think we are just constantly looking at, okay, where do we provide the most value for our audience? Where does that intersect with our business goals and providing the most profit for us? And let's focus there. You asked about the blog comments and the Facebook thing, and without getting into that too much, sure, if we had unlimited people and unlimited resources, we would have kept comments and kept Facebook, because why not? But we don't. We are a small company that has done very well for itself growing over the past few years, and that is in part because I think our leadership has been very smart about where to allocate resources. And instead of putting people onto moderating blog comments when there's not that big of an audience benefit and not that big of a business benefit, it's better to put those resources elsewhere. And so I think that is very important. Most people, especially individuals who are doing content marketing, they have very finite, everybody has a finite amount of time and money, but if you're an individual doing it, you have a lot less. So I think probably the most important thing you can do is make good decisions about where you invest your time and where you invest your resources. And I think it's that intersection between providing the most value for the audience and the most value for your business. Find those top 2, 3, 4 things, whatever you have the time and resources for, and invest there relentlessly and cut the dead weight.
Yeah, this is such an important concept and very tough decision to make for a lot of businesses. And I'll tell you, I had Cynthia Sanchez on this show last week. Incredibly well thought out ideas and strategies on Pinterest and Pinterest marketing and all this stuff around how Pinterest is showing up in search and my thing forever has been the money's in search. That's what I've always said, that is that if you're trying to really build an audience and build an audience that ultimately wants to buy your products, you have to show up in search. And Pinterest has that. They have this really great relationship with Google, and she's explaining, I'm going, this is fantastic. I need to dive into this. And then I look at the fact that I'm doubled down, tripled down in Google Plus. I love Google Plus. I'm trying to get into LinkedIn a little bit. Maybe I can keep up with Twitter and Instagram, maybe. And then Facebook's this, where the heck does a Pinterest strategy come in? It's like that these things have power, but at some point you just have to say, like, I can't get there and not lose what I've tried to do with these other things. And that's an incredibly tough decision, because it would have been so easy to follow that rabbit hole, because the way that she was describing Pinterest and the things that happen in the stats, it's like, this is amazing. So that's a tough decision to make, and I do give you guys a lot of credit for that. And the people listening, whether you agree with the things that you do, and this is what I want to caution everyone on, because Copyblogger does it does not mean that you should do it, because
right.
For you, the answer might be, Twitter doesn't work for me. I shouldn't be on Twitter. You know what I mean? So look at the reason I asked that question the way I did is because I want to know the process and the thought, not Facebook or blog comments, because those things aren't important, because they may be important to somebody else. It's how are you guys making that decision? And you answered it. Create value for the audience at the same time you're creating profit for the company. That's the thought process. I love that. So
and reassess. Constantly reassess, because it can change over time. Blog comments at one time for Copyblogger were the single most important part of growing that audience. It was huge, that conversation taking place. So things can change and evolve over time as your business and as your audience changes. So just because a decision is made right now doesn't mean that in a year you want to make the exact same one.
Yeah. All right. I want to pull up quick. Dawn says, I'm loving this Jerod Morris, great show. Jerod is killing it. Good stuff. And then Scott, I thought that I had turned the showcase and applause apps off. I was actually talking to Jerod about that beforehand, but obviously I did not, and I apologize for that. I don't use them. I thought I had turned them off, and I am not using them on purpose. For those listening to the podcast, this is a Google Hangout thing. For the people who are watching the show live, I messed up, and I'm gonna blame my dog for that because I was a little frazzled when we first showed up here. So, but I appreciate you guys showing up and being part of the show. So I want to transition into something that I'm interested in. So this is where the show gets very selfish, and that's I want to talk about Rainmaker because I am intrigued by this product. I have been a user of the Copyblogger media universe of products. I've always been Genesis guy. I've used Scribe at different times. I've used all the products at some time or another. And now I'm considering Rainmaker. I have some friends on the platform. We're actually going to be doing, this is full disclosure. Jerod's going to be doing a demo for my company in the next couple days, so we're going to get a behind the scenes. But I think this is an incredibly powerful tool for the businesses that fit what this does, and I want to dive into it. So let's talk first about high level. What is this tool from kind of 30,000 feet, and who are the companies that you've seen as fits for it, kind of as you've started going here?
I think with Rainmaker, it's important to understand with content marketing, and I'm sure that your audience does, that when you do content marketing, we kind of talked about this. You have the time, the effort, the resources over here that you can put into it, and that's a finite amount. And if you are going to invest more in your content and creating better content, which is what you need to do to stand out. I mean, you've got to create better content to really build that relationship with the audience. Well, you've got to take the time, effort, and resources to develop the content from somewhere, and that's typically from the technology side. And so I think Rainmaker, its real purpose is to kind of come in and allow you to get more out of the resources that you invest in your technology so that you can focus more on the content. And the way it does that is that instead of you needing separate hosting and a separate theme, and to go out if you're going to have a membership site and get these membership plugins, and to have separate podcast hosting, and to do all this stuff kind of piecemeal and separate and putting in all these different plugins and all that, it's all right there for you. I mean, it's 8-9 years of Copyblogger experience and development all rolled into one platform at a really, really good price that is closed and secure, so that you can have confidence that the technology stuff is taken care of, so you can just go create the content. And who's it for? It's for those people that really want to focus on their content, and clearly there are going to be some kind of do-it-yourself types that want granular control of everything that Rainmaker's not going to be for. And that doesn't mean those people can't still be with Copyblogger, because that's what Synthesis and Studio Press and all of that is for. But Rainmaker is really for the people like me, and perhaps you're like this too, that just give me stuff that's really good and works for these things I need to do, like creating landing pages and posting my podcast and developing a nice looking theme, and make it user friendly so that I can use it, and let me get on to my content, because that's what I want to focus on. And so that, I think, is the real benefit of Rainmaker, and I think why so many people who try it out are sticking around with it, because it just works. It's a whole bunch of stuff that works put together so that you can go out and create content that works.
Here's what pissed me off when I first heard about Rainmaker. The amount of time that I have lost trying to figure out how to do WordPress coding, and the amount of time that I've spent on hacker sites trying to figure out how to get something right aligned when it's this color, and like I'm like a amateur coder. I have to tell you, like, the amount of hack jobs that I have done on my site to make things look a certain way, not nice. It takes me a boatload of time, but like I think I've probably lost 50 blog posts in time, like the time I could have spent on 50 blog posts over the last, say, 4 or 5 years, just in hacking through my site trying to figure it out. And I like that this is a nice package thing, and I know that there's a lot of people who listen to this show, and this is one of the I was excited to have you on for a couple of reasons, but I really wanted to introduce them to this product, and I don't have an affiliate code for this. People who are listening, I'm not making any money off this deal here. I just think that there are a lot of people who follow this show who are great content creators that just that slug through the technology side, and guys like Joey Giangola, who does the Fearlessly Questioning podcast. He runs off Rainmaker. He loves it. It allows him to really focus on doing his Hangout podcast show. And this is one of the things I want you to dive into as I ramble through here. I promise that there's a question coming up eventually. Is he now has this like membership side, which is something that to me was not a foreign concept because I know there's plugins, but just getting it all to work together seemed like a nightmare. And built in, my understanding is there's like this kind of library membership-ish side to the platform, and I'd love for you to talk on two things. One, just first kind of confirm what it looks like and that product actually exists, so I'm not talking out my rear end. And the second is kind of the value of this content library idea, because it's something that I think you guys really pioneered and I think is incredibly powerful.
Yes, I can confirm that is there. It's one of the primary features, really. One of the biggest benefits of having Rainmaker is the ability to have this place for your best content, so that you can move people further along kind of those circles of belief like we talk about. You know, I think you always want to give people a chance to self-select themselves as more serious members of your audience if they want to. And so, you know, it's not, you know, you don't want to, a membership site isn't just about restricting stuff and, you know, having a way to make money. It can certainly do that. It can certainly help you in terms of making a profit and having another place to derive that value. But I think really it's about doing that. It's about allowing people to say, hey, I really like what you're doing. You know, I want to get more. I want to get more serious. And I think having that membership library allows you to know, okay, who are our most serious audience members? You know, because I think you want to invest more time in those people. And also, you know, the other thing to remember is the content you're creating is valuable. You know, you don't just have to be out there constantly thinking that you have to hustle and do everything for everybody. Like, you're creating great content, and it's okay to ask people to give a little bit of value themselves to get your content. And if that means giving you their email address to get this really good content, you shouldn't be afraid to ask that. You know, and I think sometimes people are, but I think that's what that membership side really allows you to do. And plus, you know, as you see things evolve, I think with content, and you know, there's this new idea out there about adaptive content, you know, where you can, you know, create a better experience for people, for your users, a more customized experience. Part of that is learning more about people, and by having people inside of a membership, you know, platform like that, you can learn more about them and create better content for them and serve them better. And so I think it does all of that, and that's, you know, again, all the elements of Rainmaker are there to be mutually beneficial, which is what content marketing is, which is using your expertise to create a mutually beneficial relationship. You know, the membership library helps you, and it helps them by putting all your best stuff in one place.
I know a couple years ago, Chris Brogan dealt with this issue as he has kind of dealt with the brunt of a lot of these things when he first started asking for money in exchange for his content, and people came out and how could you do this? Your blog has always been free. How could you put something behind a paywall? And he wasn't even asking for that much money. It was like $20 or something. You know what I mean? Like, it was like some ridiculously low number, and he got beat over the head. And I have two thoughts from that, and I think these are the two things that he kind of came with too, if I'm remembering correctly, is that one, those people were obviously not real members of his audience. Yes, they may have pinged his Google Analytics and made him feel, you know, the ego feels good because his numbers are high, but not really members of your audience if they're going to have that reaction. And two, it's a business, right? Unless you're a straight hobby blogger, this is a business, and in order to run a business, you have to make revenue, so you have to at some point ask people for money or for something in exchange for that. So I love that concept, and I think the content library is great for that, because it's so important and so tough for people at first to ask for that business.
And quick clarification there, you said hobby blogger, not copy blogger.
Yes, if you are a hobby space blogger. Yes, a hobby space.
Well, and you bring up something very important, the distinction between traffic and an audience. I mean, yeah, if you start charging for stuff, if you're going to put something behind a wall, yeah, your traffic is going to go down. But there really is no more worthless metric when it comes to building a real audience and having success online than page views. So if something drops your page views, who cares? I mean, you're right. I think if you do something like that and everybody comes out and starts screaming and they're upset, you're going to get some of that because, like we talked about earlier with expectations. If everything's always been free and now you start charging for it, you're changing people's expectations. That's going to jar people. You're going to get a reaction, but that's okay. It will shake itself out, and the people who stay are your core audience. The people who leave, maybe they got all the value they needed from you and they're off someplace else, or it's not important enough to them to invest in the value, so they're not really your audience if you're taking it to the next level. So it's a good thing, and I'm sure Chris is probably happy that happened because it's allowed him to kind of build his business today. So it's one of those things. It just depends on how you look at it. If you just have that gut reaction to it, oh my God, I lost 500 email subscribers. Well, wait a minute. Maybe it was good that you lost those 500 email subscribers because now you don't have to waste time serving people who aren't taking it seriously enough to invest the small little ask that you're making in improving.
It may even be helpful to a business or healthy for a business to shake up your audience like that once in a while. I'm sure when you guys dropped comments that it shook your audience up a little bit for whatever reason, and I'm positive that was probably a healthy thing for your business because I think the people. So I'll tell you a very quick story, and we're getting towards the end of the show here, so I'm not gonna eat up too much more time. But I used to use the word bullshit on my site. It was, no bullshit guide to this, no bullshit guide to that. That was part of my branding. And I asked the question one day here on Google+, simple, just one sentence question in a post, is the word bullshit unprofessional? And it started this huge dynamic conversation that spanned a couple different posts and reshares around using curse words in your content. And I got two reactions. I got people saying, Ryan, I love what you create, but I'm not able to share it in my stream because I know that some of the people that I know will not appreciate coming to a site who has that word on it. They just won't. And then I got other people who are like, you should be able to say whatever you want, and I love that you talk that way, and blah, blah, blah. And I started to think, and I started to look at the two segments of the audience and who the people actually were who had these opinions. And one were incredibly, and I'm not discounting one versus the other. Just when you look at one, were great audience members, people who commented and followed me and I had good relationships with, but have never bought in something from me. And the other, and actually one of the specific people were people who could potentially hire me to, at this time, one of my main ways of making revenue was speaking. So it was, I need to look at the audience that pays versus the audience that shares, and make a very specific business decision around how I'm going to move forward. And I shook my audience up big time when I took all that branding, every reference to that word I removed from my site, and it shook the audience up a little bit. But I'll tell you, in the long run, it's been so much more beneficial from a profit standpoint.
Yeah, no, and you have to make decisions like that. Again, it's that intersection between providing the most value for the audience and the most value for your business. Because if you're not focused on providing the value for your business, guess what? You're not going to be around very long, so you can't provide value for the audience. So I think, that's a smart way to look at it.
Yeah, and being the incredibly amazing host that I am, I just told that story and then sent it over to you without a question. Like, now you need to comment on this, like you're interviewing me.
By the way, as a fellow host myself, like on my post-game show, I hate it. Sometimes you just start talking and you don't quite know where the questions are going to go, and you have to, and I'll just be like, so what do you guys think?
I'm just gonna lob this out there.
I know that's the difficult part about being a host. So I can relate with that.
I love hosting. I love interviewing. And I try to work really hard at it. And one of the reasons that I call myself out on the show is because I go back and I listen to the episodes, and it's like a way of catching myself. Of like, you went off on a tangent that maybe or maybe not should have gone on. But you got to come back with a question, or the person that you're interviewing has no idea what to say to you. So that's completely off topic. But if you have an interview show, that's something to think about.
It's also the benefit of, we talked about the importance of chemistry when you're doing any type of, whether it's a video show, a podcast show, when you get that chemistry with somebody, a lot of times they'll know where you're going even if you don't. And so I think that's where there can be a lot of value in, having, kind of a repeat person on, because it can help you avoid those awkward moments where it just, there's dead silence because you didn't lead them into anything. But.
Yeah, I agree, and it's why I've considered adding a co-host at different times, because I've just always thought, man, there's days when I don't want to talk to somebody who I've never talked to before. I just want someone who knows me well and we can just riff on something, So it's all, and I've done 100, and this is going to be my 104th show. So is it time for a change? All the things to consider. I mean, I'm not saying this from a standpoint of you need to comment on this. I just think for the audience to understand that even after doing 104 shows, you're always thinking about new ways to shake your show up and add new value and stuff. And if anyone has thoughts on that, thoughts on adding a co-host, thoughts on these kind of things and different, I'd love for you to comment. RyanHanley.com/show 104. We'll get you the show notes, or wherever you find this podcast. I'm sure there'll be some sort of commenting platform, unless Copyblogger reshares it on their blog, and then we'll not have comment section.
We'll be sure to post it on our Facebook page.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jerod, man, this has been a lot of fun. We could probably talk on this topic all day long. Where can people get more information on you? Where's the best place to connect with you? Where can they learn about Rainmaker? Hit us with all the CTAs here.
The best place to go for Rainmaker is rainmakerplatform.com. And I want to really highly push the kind of the training series that Robert and Brian did over there. I believe that's newrainmaker.com/training. And they go through, it's about 7 or 8 podcasts and then 3 webinars where Brian kind of outlines the strategy for having success with the Rainmaker platform. And it's not just the Rainmaker platform. It's how to have success in any way that you're doing content marketing. And if you need a platform, here's Rainmaker. So it's very much not heavy on the hard sell. And then they've continued with the podcast. So if people aren't listening to the new Rainmaker podcast, Brian did a fascinating episode, just came out today actually, where he was talking about the next project he's thinking about doing, which is really fascinating. So I was just listening to that before we got on here. It's really interesting. For me, if anybody wants to connect with me, Twitter's probably the best place, at Jerod Morris, JerodMorris, or just shoot me an email, Jerod@copyblogger.com. And I'm always happy to connect, talk, anything.
Very cool. Well, man, this has been a great conversation. Obviously, one of my favorite topics, and I think we've come away with a lot of nuggets. As always, I'm going to show everyone. I got another full page of notes here and
nice
and interesting tidbits that you have said that I will come back and pull out. For those listening to this via podcast audio only later and want to support the show, RyanHanley.com/iTunes. Leave a review, leave a rating, make it honest. Help support the show. That's the best way to do it. I appreciate everyone who's been here live. Scott, Dawn, all the rest of you, thank you. As always, we are going to get out.